demands a wage rate, say, from 20 to 25. What's the first thing that the employer thinks of? Well, suppose you were making rowboats and you could make them out of plastic or wood. And I tell you the price of plastic doubles. What are you going to start thinking about doing? Making more rowboats out of wood, right? Namely, whenever one factor of production rises in price, you tend to substitute away. Look, if you like peas and carrots equally, and I tell you the price of peas doubled, well, you'll have a little bit more carrots, right? It's just common sense economics. Well, it's the same thing with union labor. If union labor rises from 20 to 25, what you want to do is substitute out of it and into a substitute. What's a substitute for union labor or skilled labor? Unskilled labor. There's many a way to skin a cat, so to speak. You can get your productivity with a lot of skilled workers and a few unskilled workers with about an equal amount, or with very few skilled workers who become the foreman and many, many more unskilled workers. There are lots of ways to go about this. And when the wage rises for one of them, you try to move into the alternatives. And in the old days, what would happen, unions were blue collar. They would try to call these substitute workers scabs, who were mainly people of color, less skilled people, and they would try to beat them up. And the problem with that is they fight back. So they came up with this ingenious way to get rid of unskilled competition. Minimum wage law. You don't have to beat them up. You just take away the incentive of the employer to hire substitutes for you, and now you can go from 20 to 25, and you don't have to worry about unskilled workers taking some of those jobs away. In apartheid South Africa, there were certain jobs reserved for whites. But the blacks could do it, dynamiting or whatever it is, pick and shovel with diamonds. And the white South African unions were very blatant about this. They said that the reason that they wanted a minimum wage law is to price black competitive workers out of the market so that the mine owners couldn't resort to them. So this is why we have minimum wage law, because unions like it, and unions are very powerful. They're a very powerful part of the Democratic Party. To me, it's a shame and a disgrace that the Republican Party adopts this. It's due to economic illiteracy. Because if you follow the logic of this, the minimum wage law is not the friend of the downtrodden. It's the enemy of the downtrodden. And yet the minimum wage law is being advocated supposedly for the downtrodden. So it's just, I had a full head of hair before I became an economist. You see me now because of this economic illiteracy. Okay, what I said, I started around 10:15. It's now, sorry, 9:15. It's now 10 o'clock. I said I'd go for about 45 minutes. And then I would have questions, discussion, dialogue. Please feel free to ask me about anything. Not that I'll answer correctly, but I'll try. Anything in economics, libertarian theory, what have you. And I'll repeat the question because you might not all hear. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have two questions following up on what you were just talking about with minimum wage. Yeah. The first one with respect to unions. I'm from the bluest part of Minnesota where we're iron mining. And in my mind, I was a public defender once upon a time, and I negotiated my previous experience when I took a contract, and they unionized shortly thereafter, and they negotiated a new contract which eliminated my deal for all my past experience. I went 4 years without a pay raise. Would you talk just briefly about right to work and how that allows those of us who would like to negotiate our own deal, those of us who would like to be free agents rather than contract employees, and the power that that has to help us to negotiate a better deal for ourselves? And then the second part is...
Well, let me...
Okay, go ahead.
That's enough. What he's asking about, and I'll repeat it to see if I get it to your satisfaction, right to work. What about people having the right to opt out of a union? Let me just give you a little bit background about unions. I mentioned this in my talk about abortion as a complex thing. What unions do is really two things, one of which is legitimate, the other is illegitimate. We have to distinguish between them. The legitimate thing that unions do is they organize mass quits. The idea is I go to the employer and I say, hey, boss, you're giving me $10 an hour, I need 15, and he says, you know, take a hike. Whereas if I go and I say, I represent all the 200 people in this room who are the employees, and if you don't give us all a wage increase from $10 to $12 an hour, we're all going to walk out. And now he has to think about it because we are organized, we're a team, we work together, he's got contracts that he has to fulfill, and if we all quit, he'd be in trouble, so he's more likely to accede to our demands. Fine, look, if a worker doesn't have the right to quit, he's a slave. The only problem with slavery is he couldn't quit. Otherwise, slavery wasn't so bad. I mean, you could get cotton, you get a nice tan, you could sing songs, they give you gruel. It was okay, nothing wrong, but you couldn't quit. I mean, right? I mean, that's the key element of it. You can't quit. They come along with a whip and you say, I quit. And I say, no, no, you don't understand. You can't quit. You're a slave. So if you can't quit, you're a slave. So each of us has a right to quit. Fine. Do we lose the right to quit when other people quit? No. If we have a right to quit, then the right to quit is a right, and we don't lose it when other people quit too. So a mass walkout is legitimate, and yet the early days of antitrust, they would say this is in restraint of trade, and they would put people in jail for quitting, which is not exactly libertarian. But then the unions do something else. What they do is they say, not only are we going to quit, but we're going to make sure that the scabs that you're trying to hire in our place can't get in there. We're going to surround your factory. We're going to make a boycott, a blockade, and you're not going to get trucks in or out. Well, that's a violation of property rights. So what the proper libertarian analysis of unions is I think, the right to quit, fine, en masse if you want, but you can't blockade other people. So what's our view on a proper union? You know, I was once doing some research and I was trying to find out, is there any union that is a legitimate union in the libertarian view? And I came across this thing called CLAC, C-L-A-C, Christian Labor Association of Canada. And I called them up and I said, well, do you believe in beating up scabs? Oh, no, 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 we're Christians, we turn the other cheek, we wouldn't do anything like that. And then I said, well, what about labor legislation that forces the employer to deal with you whether he wants to or not, and prohibits him from firing all of you and hiring all these scabs or replacement workers? You know, I don't know why scabs is allowed in a polite company. Isn't that hate speech? Yeah. Well, that's an aside. And he said, oh, well, yes, we favor labor legislation. Well, they're not a legitimate, a libertarian labor union. Now, what I would say is that the proper libertarian analysis or suggestion is that we just allow unions to quit en masse and nothing else. Right to work is not exactly appropriate. It says that it bans unions, in effect. It says you have a right to work, but suppose I'm an employer and I want to have a voluntary union. The right to work precludes me from doing it. So it's sort of like the economics of second best. It's not really what we want. It's a lot better than what we have, but the ideal would be to look at the union the way they are, and they do something legitimate and something illegitimate. You just take away the illegitimate thing, and then people can have unions if they want. So that would be my answer to your question. Before giving me a second question, let me see if other people have questions or objections or whatever, and then if not, I'll come back for your second one. Yes, young lady.
I wasn't at the rally yesterday, so...
Could you speak louder? I can't hear you.
Could you just summarize what you said is the libertarian stand on abortion?
Okay, I'll summarize what I said. How many people heard the abortion thing? Oh, maybe about a third. Well, I'll give a very truncated view on abortion. Abortion, just like labor unionism, is a complex word. There's some parts of it that are legitimate and other parts of it that are illegitimate. What abortion consists of is two things. One, I think, is legitimate, the other, I think, is illegitimate. The two things are eviction, ridding yourself of a fetus and putting it into somewhere else, and the other is killing it. Now, the pro-life people say you have no right to evict, and you have to carry the baby until 9 months, and you have no right to kill. The pro-choice people say You can evict and you can kill. The libertarian view, as I see it, is you can evict, but you can't kill. Now, take the case of the rape. A woman is walking down the street, she's grabbed, she's impregnated. You now have a fetus, and by the way, my view on when life starts is with a fertilized egg. Not when you're born. Because the difference between a baby when it's born and when it's 9 months, it's about to be born, there's no difference. It looks the same. I mean, it's the same creature, the same person, the same human being. An egg alone will not become a human being. A sperm alone will not become a human being, but a fertilized egg will become a human being if it's put in the proper environment. And therefore, I think that human life starts at the fertilized egg stage. I gave a joke. I said, you know what in the Jewish tradition, when the fetus is viable, when it graduates medical school. Actually, strictly speaking, in the Jewish tradition, it's when there's a heartbeat. But I don't see that heartbeat as crucial. I mean, before the baby has a heartbeat, it's about to get a heartbeat next day, saying. And right now they think it's not human, and next minute the heart starts pumping. Well, I mean, I'm in favor of hearts beating, you know, I'm not against that, but it doesn't seem to be such a crucial thing because the baby who doesn't have a heartbeat will soon become one with a heartbeat if it's kept in a proper environment. So to me, the fertilized egg is a human being. But getting back to rape, who owns the womb? Remember, private property rights is half of libertarianism, the other half is non-aggression. Who's aggressing against who? And what I say is that the fetus who is in the raped woman's womb is a trespasser on her. She didn't agree to it, she doesn't want it, it's growing in her, she might be a 13-year-old girl and now there's something growing in her that she doesn't want. I think she has a right to evict it. Not to kill it, to evict it. Now look, you know in 200 years medical technology is going to be such that you can evict a fetus at any time in the gestation period and put it in a super test tube or a host mother or whatever they'll have in 200 years with no harm to the baby. Would she have a right to evict then? Of course she would. If we adopt my policy, which I think is correct, but again, and I'm glad no one is booing me for this, maybe the people booing it, I thought it was a disgrace because, you know, we want to have libertarianism as a growing philosophy, and if we can't consider changes, then it'll never grow. We'll be stuck in whatever we have. If we adopt this policy in one fell swoop, we save 1/3 of babies. All babies in the last trimester, 7th, 8th, and 9th months, can't be killed. Whereas we're losing the war. I'm pro-life. My heart is pro-life. I love life. I'm in favor of life. You can't have liberty if you don't have life. I'm a libertarian. I favor life. But we're losing the war. Right now, you have this grotesque, despicable thing of partial birth abortion, where the baby is 8.5 months old and it's viable outside, and they go in and they stick a hole in the brain, they pull out the brain, and now they evict the fetus who's now dead. Ron Paul talks about a fetus coming out and they put him in a pail and he's crying. I mean, it's just disgusting. We're losing. I play handball. Sort of like racquetball, only you do it with your hands. And what I learned there is if you're losing, try something different. You know, if the high game is no good, try the low game, try the middle game, whatever. We're losing. We pro-life people are losing. They're killing people, mass murder, with weapons of mass destruction, scalpels. We're losing. Let's consider an option, an alternative. Now, as medical, right now it's the last trimester, but in 10 or 15 years it might be the last 4 months. Namely, the fetus will be viable in the 6th month. And then as medical technology improves, it'll get down in the 5th, the 4th, the 3rd month, and eventually we'll get down, all babies will be saved, if we adopt this. But if we don't adopt this, these pro-choice people will have won, and even if medical technology can make it possible to evict safely, we'll not get there. So I've written a lot about this. if maybe 12 or 13 journal articles, maybe I'll come out with a book on this, not yet, but one day. If you want more, go to my web, walterblock.com, or email me. I'm a professor at Loyola University, New Orleans. You can get my email address that way. And I'll send you a lot more stuff. And I'll consider objections now. I couldn't do it in the, I'll get to you in 1 second.
Can I just quickly follow up on that?
Yeah.
Even as medical technology advances, it's always going to be more expensive than less expensive at the earlier stages. In your theory, where do you see the cost falling? For example, I've done some research on low birth weight babies. They're right now about 7% of all births, but about 50% of all costs. So you're going to be adding a lot of cost to the system. Who would bear that cost?
Right. So the question is, I'll repeat it, there's people in the back might not have heard you. What about the baby who gets evicted? Who pays for this baby? Because it'll be costly. One, to evict and then to put them somewhere else, it's costly. Well, the people who adopt. The people who adopt this baby, and I assume the pro-life forces, the churches, the people of goodwill, will do this. I think, somebody asked me about this, I think it's bad to evict. I'm not in favor of evicting. It's sort of like being a prostitute or taking drugs. I don't favor this. I think it's problematic. Even for a raped woman, the baby is innocent. All the babies are equally innocent, and there's a little human being, this guy Aiken got in trouble for saying that even rape shouldn't have abortion. Well, I agree. There should never be any abortion, because abortion is eviction plus killing. But there should be eviction. Not that it's good, but it should be legal. Again, that distinction between favoring something and favoring the legalization of something, I don't favor eviction. I think it's very bad, and maybe in the case of a 13-year-old girl who got raped, what can I say? But an adult woman who gets pregnant and changes her mind, that's not nice. That's immoral. But should it be illegal? We libertarians distinguish between immoral and illegal. There are lots of things that are immoral that we think should be legal. I think it's immoral to be a prostitute or drugs or any of these weird things, sadomasochism, whatever. But I think it should be legal. So I think eviction should be legal, even though I think it's immoral. But the key element is that if we adopt this policy, we have a chance. At least we have another option. We should discuss it. We should think about it. We shouldn't squelch it like yesterday at that conference. There were people that were so angry. Although I must say that afterward, maybe 100 people came up to me and congratulated me on my courage for doing it. I didn't think it was courageous to talk about libertarian theory at a libertarian meeting, but evidently it was. So I hope I've done justice to that question.
We have time for one more very quick
Oh, just one more? I thought we were only moving. I'm revving to go. The young man over here. Yes, sir.
You're very kind to say young man. I'm an avid walleye fisherman, and if I were doing what I really like, I'd be in Minnesota on Lake of the Woods, 10 miles out from shore. Let's suppose I'm out there with my brother-in-law fishing walleyes, and I go to the front of the boat, lift one of the hatches, and find I've got a stowaway in my boat. I don't like stowaways. I've only got 2 rods. I asked this stowaway, can you swim? He says, not 10 miles. Sorry. Do I have a right to evict?
This is a very good objection. It's one that I deal with in my writings. First, let me repeat the question. This young gentleman here is a fisherman, and he's out in the middle of the big lake, and the shore is 10 miles, and he discovers a stowaway. And he asks the stowaway, can you swim? And the guy says, not for 10 miles. And the guy says, well, do you have a life preserver? And then this young man here says, no. I'm elaborating, but I'm sure I'm doing it in the spirit. And the question is, does he have a right to evict? He's got no right to kill. He can't take his gun, and he's got a gun. He just can't say, well, you're a stowaway, I'm going to shoot you. There was this case mentioned by Judith Jarvis Thompson, a philosopher, and what she says is, you go to bed tonight, and tomorrow morning you wake up with somebody in bed with you. And there's a umbilical cord attaching your kidney to his kidney.
Oh my.
And you turn to him and say, well, how come you to be in my bed? What are you doing here? He says, I don't know. He's about as innocent as your stowaway. I don't know. All I know is last night I was in a hospital attached to a kidney dialysis machine, and now I'm here. I assume that a bunch of maniacal doctors unhooked me from the machine, drugged you, stuck us together, and now here we are. Does the person with a healthy kidney have a right to evict? Yes. This person is sort of like a stowaway. What he should do is go to the hospital with him and say, hey, unhook him and stick him back together with a, what do you call it, with a dialysis machine. But suppose he's in the middle of a boat or in the middle of the desert or God knows where. Does he have a right to cut it? Namely, evict, cut, not the person, but cut the umbilical cord, namely evict? Yes. If we sincerely believe in private property rights, you have a right. You don't have to stay with this guy for 9 months. You don't have to stay with him for the rest of your life, even though he's going to die if you disconnect him and you're the only 2 people left in the world. It would be nice. You would be immoral if you didn't. But are you guilty of a crime if you evict? I say no. And I go through all sorts of other permutations and combinations, you know, I don't know, you push somebody out of the way of a truck and he falls into the water and he can't swim, and all sorts of cases, but I'm going to have the hook soon, so I have to get off. So thanks for your attention. And
I have one comment, though.
Yes.
I have one comment. The assumption is that everybody has that higher order thinking skills. And not everyone has that higher order thinking skills, so they may not understand what you're saying.
This lady says that what I'm saying is complex. I'm putting words in your mouth, but I hope I'm getting the spirit. It's a complicated issue. Not everyone has the mental capacity to understand it, and that's perhaps why some people took great umbrage. Well, that's true, but I'm a professor. I'm supposed to profess. I mean, you know, I can't say, well, people are too stupid to understand the difference between the minimum wage and this and that. I have to, you know, it's sort of, you know, those what do you call it, robots, you turn the crank and they sort of march. Well, I'm like that. I have to march. I have to talk about important issues. I'm a libertarian. I'm a theoretician. I want to apply libertarian theory, not to easy issues, like privatizing the post office. That's like shooting fish in a barrel. I want to talk about difficult issues, and some of the difficult issues are difficult. And not everyone can understand it. Maybe these people need a little infusion of IQ points. I don't know. There are a lot of questions, but she's tougher than me, and I thought you had nothing until noon.
No.
Oh, you have something going.
I had a very quick one.
Okay.